the coveted hand video. How to draw hands, the ways to draw hands. Well, I think there's a lot of different ways to draw hands. There's a lot of different videos on the ways to draw hands, but I have two main things that I want to go over. Well, 2.5 main things that I want to go over on how to kind of construct the hand. And because hands are hard, I have a bunch of hands pre-drawn, and I'm going to talk about it, talk through it, and we'll go over everything. The way to construct the hand, I'm not going to go over anatomy, but it's good to know that you have a bunch of different tendons and bones in here that help the hand extend, flex, extension, flexion. You just want to keep all of that in mind. You have 3 masses on your hand. You have the thumb mass, which is all of this right here. You have the pinky side mass over here, karate chop mass, and then you have this sort of part right here. And then your hand, your fingers come out of that. Here, the webbing of your fingers is higher up than where it bends. Your knuckles are lower than where the webbing is, so just keep that in mind. It's very structural too. Okay, so how do you actually get into the hand? The hand can be simplified as a rectangle with a fat triangle here and a thin triangle here. This is gonna be the main palm. What you want to do next is to separate the index finger from the middle 2 fingers. So you have a section here for the index finger, and then you have a big section here for both the middle finger and the ring finger. Pinky is its own little thing. It's protruding out on its own little triangle here. Your thumb has a second triangle right here to help sort of create this disposable thumb feature. And then you can draw out the thumb like this. Your thumb will typically around reach where the second joint is, so you can kind of have like rhythm lines like this going down. You have your index finger. Your fingers are separated, so make sure you have some room right between them. And then your index finger can come out like this. And then I would draw both your middle finger and your ring finger together as one solid piece. It makes it easier to manage and gets your proportions a little bit better. And then you can draw the tiny separation after. Afterwards, your pinky is its own little thing, but typically you would want it to kind of be curving in towards the hand rather than away, but that depends on, how you want to move your hand. But if it's more of like a resting position, then the pinky would probably be curving in a little bit more, like this. Pinkies are shorter, I think we all know that. And then just make sure you have the webbing here. You have your knuckles being protruded out. Wherever the bend is, you have your radius, and then these tendons will kind of slide back down like this and attach right here. So that's going to be the main idea. And we just want to keep that idea alive throughout the whole thing. So if we see over here, we have the hand. It's the same kind of building construction. Separate with the 2 triangles like this. Boom, boom. Index finger comes out like this. Your other 2 fingers will come out like this. And then you have your thumb, and then you have your pinky. Make them thinner than what you think, unless of course the character itself has really fat fingers, like a dwarven character or something. But otherwise, you want the fingers to be a little bit slender than you might think, because I feel like the tendency is to draw them thicker than you're used to, than what's actually there. Side angle 2. So this is going to get into the next idea, whereas the top of the fingers tend to be flat and the bottom would be curved like this. Top would be flat, bottom would be curved, and also the wrist would be a square shape like this. Because as we learned in the forearm section, that the forearm will have more of a round form into the bony part of the form, which is the wrist area, the radius plus the ulna, and then you'll have the hand square like this, and then you can follow the same method. But that's typically the idea. So now if we're looking at these hands here from Witch Hat Atelier, you'll see that they're constructed in a similar way, right? If we draw this hand over here, it'll be the same kind of vibe, right? You'll just put the square, the rectangle, in perspective. Maybe you can add a little bit of thickness to it if you want to be fancy. you'll have this, you can see the second rectangle being brought out right here. So I would bring out the second rectangle like this, or the second triangle. The pinky triangle is hidden, it's very foreshortened, so you barely see it. And then you'll mark out the distances between, or you'll mark out the widths of the index and the middle two fingers. Boom, get your thumb out. Your thumb knuckle will technically be where your, like the rest of your knuckles are, and then the thumb will reach the first bend, right? So we'll have this. You want to keep in mind these rhythm lines that you have. So like when you see these fists and these knuckles, you have these swooping rhythm lines that you want to basically keep track of and make sure that they're like lined up and gestural, so that way the hand has a little bit of fluidity and motion into it. So I'm kind of building this out here. Boom, boom, then boom, boom. The fingers are also, I don't know how to say, but gestural, right? They're not like stiff like this. Fingers will move around. They're not perfectly lined up. Even when you make a fist like this, you can see that these two fingers are like popped up while these ones are down. It's kind of, there's a fluid motion to it. If you see this hand, the pinky's a little bit raised, this index finger is pushed down more. These two are kind of lined up, and then this one is, the thumb is on its own thing. So you can kind of just keep track of the fingers as they are basically creating gesture and form. Same thing with here, you can see that there's always this gestural fluidity to it. So you want to keep that in mind. Now, starting here, this is where I want to bring in the second idea. So let's go over first. First idea is to have the rectangle with separating out the thumb and the pinky, so that way you only have these fingers here to work with, and then you can have your pinky in later and then your thumb later. So this is the first idea. The second idea now is that the fingers are rectangles like this, and we can see it with these shadows here. These shadows show it very well, very nicely, because these shadows are very rectangular. They showcase that these fingers have a corner to them. Now I have other videos that I've mentioned before where I'm saying that put corners on things, because putting corners on things gives things a sense of solidity, a sense of three-dimensionality, and that is very, very helpful when you're drawing on a 2D surface, because you don't want things to get messy or, you know, slimier than it needs to be. But also, if you look at the finger itself, due to like the structure and the bones of it, you kind of have this like mechanical feeling to the finger, like this, right? And then it bends over. It's flat on the top due to the bones, and then also due to the way the muscles are growing on the bones, it creates a bit of a structural square form. Just gonna see if I can draw it from memory, because I haven't drawn finger bones in a long time, but it'll be something like this, right? You have these spheres that allow the flexion and the extension of the finger, and then you have the knuckle and the phalanges coming down like this. So there's a lot of mechanics to the motions, to the wiggling motions, and in order to fully capture it and also capture lighting on it, you want to have a clear top plane, a side plane, like this. And that's what you're seeing with here, right? You have these top planes and these side planes being shown through the lighting. Same thing with these ones here. For this, you can kind of see how the lighting and the squareness of the finger. You see this finger here. You can start off with a little bit of cylindrical form, right, as it curves in and it does this. But you want to try to find corners onto it, just to give it a little bit more structure. Structure always helps with drawing, like this. And then you can see that there's a top plane, a side plane, top plane, and a side plane. And then to tie it back in with the other idea that I had about the rhythm lines and the motions, you can see the fluidity of the knuckles being turned, the fingers being turned. Things are kind of disappearing. There's a lot of overlap. So it's very helpful to have a good sense of 3D form, so that way you can draw things as they overlap with each other. So if I want to put, you know, the middle finger on this one here, you can start with something like this, and then I want to extend it like this for some reason, and then you can also put, you know, try to keep the gesture in. So I'm going to put the other finger like this, and then just make sure that you're having top-down side plane form, which atelier hands are really fun. Now this hand here, I didn't capture the gesture enough, so I just redid it and tried to find the main big structures of it as well. But you can see here, I mainly want to see this shadow, and it's right here. So the way that this shadow basically reveals the square structure of the finger, right? You have a very clear top plane being in the light, and then it folds into shadow. Here too, there's a top plane in the light that folds into shadow, and then all of this is in shadow, and then it creates the square form of the finger. These hands are tricky because they have so much motion, but the way that I would tackle drawing hands from reference and looking at hands is to definitely see the main structures. So I'm going to do this roughly, just so that, you know, there's like demonstration. I would probably put the rectangle in, probably separate out the pinky a little bit. The thumb, at this point, because you're seeing the big mass of, I forgot what it was called, like the hypothyroid, whatever, thumb muscle, you have that there. I would put a big structure like this, have the veins or the finger lines, folds over here, and have your thumb out to try to find some placement. And then you basically want to find the webbing, find the big gesture lines. So for here, it goes from the thumb, it stretches out like this, and then it kind of curves down like this, right? So it creates this kind of envelope. You want to make an envelope to sort of wrap everything in, just so you can kind of get the sense of everything. So you have the thumb, and then it's wrapping on this piece of charcoal, stone, whatever this is. You have the middle finger around here. You have the index finger coming out over here. And you can see how I'm going really lightly and I'm just mapping stuff out. And then you have this pinky dropping down like this, like so. You can move the ground plane up. The wrist bends out like this. And then once you have this kind of mapped out, then you can start adding in the smaller details. Always work from big to small, big to small. Find the big gestures, right? Like I see a curve like this, and it curves down like this. Gesture, boom, fingers. This finger has an overlap, so we want to keep that into account. So we have something like this, like this. Because this pose is so complicated, right? The earlier method that I showed, where it's like you separate it out, you're gonna have to modify it so that it fits, right? So like in this case, you could have probably done this and then combine it like this, but I did separate out the pinky already. But because the pose is so different from a neutral like resting hand pose, you always want to be modifying different techniques and things like that. So that's why it's helpful to learn a lot of techniques. You want to have a lot of techniques under your belt so that you can pull from this grand knowledge of library of knowledge in your head to fit whatever like occasion it requires, you know, like whatever this drawing requires. So if I'm copying from this pose, I know that the method that I just showed, where you're separating out everything, this isn't going to work that well. But if you're drawing a specific hand pose, say if you're drawing like a pose like this or something, then yeah, this method would work fine. So that's kind of like that idea. Keep track of the big muscles over here. If we're looking at something like this pose, I really liked this hand pose, but this one really shows the 3D structure of the finger with this very square shadow going out like this, where you have these really intense marked out shadows that showcase the square form. But the other thing that it shows is this curve going up like this, right? There's like the way that the hand works is you have your radius muscle and then you have your ulna over here, or not radius muscle, but your radius bone, and then your ulna. You have two bones here. They create the tarsals, right? All right, let's draw it. You have two bones that are like this. This is thumb side. You have the tarsals, which is basically like a bunch of baby muscle or baby bones in here. Like, who cares, right? And then from here on outwards, you have the metatarsals. I hope I'm remembering it correctly. It's been so long since I studied hand bones. You have your metatarsals, this, tarsals, metatarsals, and then you have your phalanges. Your phalanges are your fingers, like this. So your palm is made up of individual bones. Your palm, like there's a pinky bone, there's one bone here, there's one bone here, there's one bone here. It's just that your muscle and your skin just hides all of those bones, right? It's not like one big thing here. These are all individual bones, and because they're individual bones, they have so much movement. And the knuckles have gesture to them, right? And so that's why we have these curves in the actual knuckles themselves. Like, you can have hands go like this, we have curves like this, we have flatten out like that. It's all in the anatomy. So learn anatomy. Same thing with this for these ones here. So this is an example that I can use the rectangle with these method, right? You basically, like, the way of this method is basically telling you to separate out the main structures. The pinky is auxiliary, the thumb is also auxiliary. You want to get these three locked in and then slowly start adding in the other two. So then if we have something like this, we're separating out the three middle fingers, and then we can get these locked in, and then the pinky has its own little space where it exists, and then the thumb has its own space where it exists. That's how you kind of want to think about it. And then of course we see the square shadows, and we want to have the square shadows, because what the square shadows show is the structure of the phalange of the finger. Okay, now it's time for the little half tip. The little half tip, I've already kind of gone over it, but it's basically knowing the three pads, the muscle pads on your hand. If you look at like ape hands too, because we share a common ancestor with apes, with the great apes, they have really prominent pads on their hands, and we also have strong muscle pads on our hands too. If we look at a hand like this, we have a muscle pad over the top like this, we have a muscle pad here for the thumb that we've already seen, and then we have a muscle pad down here for the pinky side. So that way, when you're drawing things from like the pinky side or something, if I say I want to draw a hand and I'm looking at it from like the thumb is here, you have your muscle pad for the thumb, that's fine. You have the muscle pad here, which is probably the least prominent one, where all the fingers will come out. And then you have this one here, which you do want to get a good sense of, because it'll help you block out the hand, which is the pinky side muscle pad, like this. And then you have the three center fingers, and then you have the pinky finger right here. So keep track of these big muscle pads here. That's basically the half tip, because I don't really have anything else to say about that. Just make sure that you know about that for the palm side, and then everything else is basically just learning the structure of the hand, which is rectangle, mini triangle, fatter triangle. Separate out the index finger from the middle and ring finger. Find the gestures and the curving of the hand. Put out your thumb, put out your pinky. Make sure you have proportions ready. Hands are a direct reflection of your comfortability with the fundamentals. The higher fundamentals you have, the more hands will make sense. And then also just make sure you draw a lot of hands. You gotta like fill up sketchbooks with hands. You'll basically find patterns for the hands too. So like you'll have general hand impressions. So okay, this is tip 3.5, baby tip 3.5. So much of hands too, especially if you know you're in concept art or you're in animation or whatever, unless you're actually, you know, like the hand is the focus of it. If you're drawing like a character or something, right, and they're standing like this, so many hands in this situation can just be like the impression of one. So like, and to capture the impression of a hand, you basically want to have the thumb protruding, like a prominent thumb icon, a prominent index finger icon, and then everything else can just be like marked into a blob. If you have something like this, probably that, a prominent index finger, and then everything else can just be out like that. If the hand is open, prominent thumb, prominent index finger, everything else can just kind of be slapped on like this. I don't even know what this hand pose is. All right, let's make a hand pose because we have reference right here. If it's something like, if I want to just really quickly draw hands, I don't know, what's the hand pose? Like this, like a resting like this angle, prominent hand, index finger, everything else can kind of slide out like this, maybe even a little bit on the bottom. So you want to focus on the main iconography of the hand, which is having a strong thumb, having a good index finger, and then I would probably bind these two and then not even include the pinky if you don't need the pinky. If the hand isn't the subject of the drawing and you're not doing like a figure drawing or like a gouache painting or whatever, and you're just sort of sketching and doodling, hands don't need to be detailed to have the impression of a hand. That's the epilogue.